The title of the article is Archbishop Viganò, Deep Church has infiltrated the Catholic hierarchy. Quote, "We have a deep church that has infiltrated and occupied the Catholic Church," Archbishop Viganò wrote. "The members of this counter-church have transformed the Catholic Church into an organization in support of the woke globalist left." Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò published new claims that a network he calls Deep Church has infiltrated the Catholic hierarchy. Early this morning, March the 6th, that would have been yesterday, Archbishop Viganò, a former papal nuncio to the United States, posted to X, this is formerly Twitter, answers to two sets of questions he said were posed by the New York Times but went unpublished. Apparently they didn't like his answers. The first, he wrote, was, "What is the state of the American Church right now? Was the lasting impact of your 2018 letter and the concerns you raised about Pope Francis' leadership?" The second, he added in a second tweet, was, "How are those who have opposed the direction Pope Francis has taken the Church working to correct course? What, if anything, is being done to make sure the next pontiff will not repeat what many see as Francis's shortcomings? Or is that futile?" To the first question, touching on the Catholic Church in the United States, Viganò stated, pardon me, that the Catholic hierarchy has been almost entirely composed of emissaries of a very powerful subversive lobby. The Archbishop continued, "We have a deep church that has infiltrated and occupied the Catholic Church, as well as a deep state that controls the governments of many nations. The members of this counter-church have transformed the Catholic Church into an organization in support of the woke globalist left, after having destroyed faith and morals and subverted the purposes that our Lord Jesus Christ gave to his church. The plan must be seen in its entirety. The deep state and the deep church are two sides of the same coin, and both take orders from the same master who finances them both, as we have seen in the U.S. aid scandal." Viganò said that to remove the ties between this deep church and the globalist elite, corrupt prelates and other clergy must be removed and their good confreres promoted. It is necessary to break the bond of the deep church's ideological and financial dependence on the globalist elite by ousting corrupt and blackmailed cardinals, bishops, and priests, and instead promoting those whose lives are consistent with the gospel and who have at heart the salvation of souls in fidelity to the perennial tradition of the Catholic Church. The Archbishop stated that the American Church was in a disastrous situation and claimed it had been planned. He stated that the systematic infiltration could be traced to certain now deceased churchmen. The American Church, also thanks to the prominent role of the American Jesuits in the subversion of Catholic doctrine, finds itself in a disastrous situation, deliberately planned in recent decades through a systematic infiltration that we can trace back to certain prominent figures. Some of these names you're going to be surprised by. Cardinals Francis J. Spellman of New York, John F. Dearden of Detroit, Joseph Bernardine of Chicago, Raymond G. Hunthausen of Seattle, Roger Mahoney of Los Angeles, William J. Levada of San Francisco. Now, as a side note, I'm not surprised by any of them after what I've learned over many years. The Archbishop also named a series of living American prelates whom he described as corrupt. Quote, "They are all Bergoglio's men, protected by him, promoted by him, and perhaps blackmailed by him." He alleged, "Let us not forget the decisive role of the seminaries, from where the infiltration and capillary corruption of the clergy started." End of quote. Viganò believes that the American Church will emerge from the crisis. He identifies if the faithful cut the funding and support traditional Catholic communities instead, and if the Trump administration investigates and prosecutes men in the hierarchy who have committed crimes or tried to cover them up. Now that's the explanation for the first question. I'm going to add to this. If the Trump administration has the courage to prosecute some of these clergy, whether they are priests, bishops, or cardinals, it's going to be quite something. It will be quite something. Now, I will state that there are any number of them that need to be prosecuted and convicted because of pedophilia. There may be other crimes, but pedophilia is going to be at the very heart of this. It is a real serious problem in the Catholic Church. The hierarchy has tried to hide it by buying off, settling out of court a lot of cases over recent years, a lot of cases, to the tune of $3 to $4 billion, something like that. I think it's $3 billion, but I'm not sure. Maybe 4 now. But the point is this: there are a lot of hidden crimes that take place here, and there are other things these clergymen could be arrested for, which I won't go into right now. Now, in regard to the second question, which touched on the prevention of another pontiff like Francis, the Archbishop was dismissive of conservative cardinals who do not question the Second Vatican Council and its disastrous reforms. He alleged that Cardinals Raymond Burke and Robert Serra fit this description. So in other words, he doesn't have any hope in even men like him because they conform to Vatican II. However, Viganò believes that this cannot happen anyway, as 110 cardinals out of 138 cardinals have been created by Bergoglio precisely to shield the Bergoglian synodal revolution and guarantee that it continues. He continued, "Those who enter the conclave thinking they only need to plug a few holes while continuing on a course that has proven to be a disaster, I am referring to the conciliar revolution, will not obtain any lasting results. There are now 60 years of errors and horrors that need to be completely reset, a titanic task which only divine intervention can make possible." Finally, Viganò threw doubt on the legitimacy of the cardinals chosen by Francis by repeating his accusation that the pontiff is a usurper. Bergoglio's usurpation, which I have denounced and which has earned me excommunication, undermines the legitimacy of the cardinals he has created in these last 12 years and the validity of the election of any successor. This is why any operation of the transparency and justice is needed before proceeding to convene a conclave. To believe that the death of Bergoglio can make us simply forget everything and allow us to turn the page without doing anything would be a very serious error and a betrayal of the mandate that our Lord gave to the apostles and their successors. Pardon me again. That concludes the article. And touching on his response to the two questions. I agree very much with what he said. He's been very courageous in recent years to be able to come out with not only his thoughts, but his conclusions. And he knows that any real correction in the problems in the church won't happen easily and probably will not happen correctly. Some would say that it would require divine intervention. That's not normally how God works. He works through men. He depends upon the goodwill, the goodness, and the holiness of men. What we will see after the death of Jorge Bergoglio will certainly have a conclave. Beyond that, I can't say. I don't know. But there are many prayers that certainly are needed. And yes, the Archbishop correctly stated that Bergoglio named a vast majority of the cardinals in the conclave, which more than likely assures that the next man to be elected will follow somewhat in his footsteps. It would take a miracle of grace for a man to be elected and to turn things back the way they need to be. And so, for ourselves, we simply need to pray. Pray, hope that there is some good. Am I hopeful? No. Because you have to look at it in a very realistic way. Because once again, God doesn't intervene directly with things like this. Yes, he can inspire, provide the grace, but he doesn't interfere with the free will of men. We know this most definitively. And therefore, when you have a vast majority of the College of Cardinals who have been made in the image of Jorge Bergoglio, which is why they were chosen, it doesn't look hopeful. It doesn't look hopeful at all. So we will see what divine providence brings us. Bergoglio's not dead yet. It looked like a few days ago that he might just die. But he's not dead yet. We don't know how much longer he will live. Yes, his health is extremely poor, but that doesn't mean that he's going to die at this time. He could live on. So I'm very grateful that Archbishop Viganò is willing to come out and answer these questions in the way he did. You know, it's obvious that I agree with him on these different points. There's a long history of problems in this country, and these problems began to surface even before Vatican II. That was indicated when he mentioned Cardinal Spellman. Only in recent years have I come to understand the problems that existed there. But there were other cardinals around too, even before Vatican II, that were creating any number of problems. And the one thing that I will state here, we've come to understand that a number of these cardinals, they were either communist or communist sympathizers. That went a long way toward the destruction of the church in this country. I don't think we'll ever really know the extent of it, because I don't know, first of all, of anyone that knows the degree to which it occurred, who was still living at this time. If we could go back in time 40 or 50 years, we probably would come up with a lot of answers. And there have been actually a few books that have been written on this. But how complete those books were and still are, we don't know. We don't know. But as far as the present situation, You really need someone who is in authority who is going to clean house in this country, which means you're not going to be left with too many bishops. I don't foresee that happening. I would like to hope and pray that it would happen because that's what's needed. But time will tell. And we certainly do pray and put it in God's hands.